Welcome back to Online Darts. We're here between sessions at the Super Series, so we've grabbed Duzza. Glenn, first of all, this is incredible down here, isn't it? It's just getting better and better.
Honestly, people ask me that question and I tell them, I love it. I absolutely love being here. I did it for a couple of weeks and I don't think I enjoyed it as much. If you remember me as a dart player as well, one thing I really didn't enjoy was being away from home, which is a tough task when you're a top player, especially when I was in the top 16 as well. It was very, very difficult. But yeah, a week away here doing commentary, I absolutely love it.
Look, you've taken to the commentary like a duck to water, and is this where you see yourself now?
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to be a dart player no more. If I do become a dart player again, if I can have some success in the seniors, I'm definitely throwing better. Let's just say that. But the intention was to get some ADCs in me because I haven't heard the words match on yet. But I had a little session with a guy called Daniel Poole who does a lot of videos of me. He saw my worst of me throw, and last night he nearly had tears in his eyes. He was really, really pleased I was learning to throw again. But it was funny, Charlie Costafine's in the house as well, and he walked into the front room and I tightened up. So that's the worry that when it's game on, but I did just do it on the back of an exhibition with Stephen Bunting and Steve Beaton, and I thought it was great. I put the piece of paper over the bull, hit the bull, a 140 checkout, 112 using with the last dart summer, the old Duzza, where I was having good crack, I was enjoying myself, and you can't help it when you're with Stephen Bunting. So the game is in a better place than it's been for 18 months, let's just say that. But do I really want to go through the thought of being a dart player? I'm not going to hold too much hope. If someone offered me a big job at Sky ITV, I think that would mean an awful lot more to me. I try to say that I forgot, sometimes when you self-reflect, people don't realise what I achieved. You know, 3 Lakesides, 2 World Masters, a Premier League, got to number 10 in the world in the PDC. Like, I did my bit, but people only focus on the here and now, you know. And I've had people go, oh, as if I was like really had 6 months to live or something like that. So it's been a funny old period. Do I see myself as a commentator and a coach? I'm really, really enjoying myself. I want to be the best coach in the world, just like I used to want to be the best dart player in the world.
It's interesting, just kind of pick a couple of bits off of that. When did you come to terms with yourself then that it wasn't Glen Durrant, the dart player, anymore?
Well, there was a couple of incidents at the Pro Tour. I remember playing Gezi Price and I went A, B, C, D. And I walked off 6-0 in 7 minutes. And Gezi genuinely, because most people were like, oh, they didn't want to really beat you like that, Glenn. And then I could see them going, get in there. I remember once when someone, I won't name him, I looked at the draw. He looked over, no, he didn't look over, he looked at the draw and went, get in. So I'd become the joke. And I remember, I hope he doesn't get upset with this, but I remember playing Dawson Michelle when I first went over in 2019, and he was seen as someone with no confidence, no wins under his belt, and when I drew him, I did something similar. So, you know, like, I didn't get too upset with the person that did it. I'd just gone from being the one that nobody wanted to play, that methodical, tough, 100 average man guaranteed, to being a bit of a joke, really. And that sort of hurt a little bit. So there was partly in that, but what a massive relief on the World Championship qualifiers, November 22, will it have been? So I was just glad it was over then. I thought my darts would come back quite quickly after that, but they didn't. I had a horrendous World Seniors, wish I didn't go, but I promised Jason I would go in it, and Jason looked at me and said, I won't put you through that ever again, Jason at MODUS. But then he asked me recently, would you be interested in the match play? And I said, you know what, yeah I do, because, you know, I'm 150 to 1, the rank outside alongside Trina. I tell you what, I'm playing a lot better, but I haven't heard game on yet.
You put a couple of bits there which I was going to touch on, but also we'll go on to it now. Going to the Circus Tavern, knowing you like I do, and I spoke to you in the Newcastle exhibition in the December leading up to it, had you ever thought about it, or did contemplate not going to the tavern even though you said yes?
I wouldn't let Jason down for starters, but I was ill prepared. I was playing, I thought, a little bit better. See, the problem is when you practice on your own, because for 18 months I didn't ask for any help, everyone offered it, and I just said no, I hid myself away, and I thought I threw like Joe Cullen. I thought I was giving it this and letting go of the dart, but in reality I was getting there, thinking I was pulling it back, and actually I was going forward and then doing this crazy movement. So prior to Circus Tavern, I thought I was throwing better. And then when I watched the game back, and it was actually that bit there, you know, the tension in my arm. So I call it the Bruce Grobbelaar now, you know, relax the, you know, when you the penalty shootout, just trying to relax that body, and getting that phase was always quicker, because of course I've studied me throw so much. But I studied it so much where I was more technical rather than just throw the dart, rather than just enjoying the game like you used to. Because the guy that beat Danny Noppert, he didn't think technique. He just threw a dart because he loved throwing a dart. He just looked at a target and hit it. And then I've just become this overthinking monster. But I was out in the limelight. No one was writing about me. I was doing other things, and I was beginning to enjoy what was going on.
So when that call came for the match play in York, did you have to take some time to think about it? I
was just off a fantastic practice session. If you'd have messaged the day before, I might not have accepted. If you'd have messaged the day after, I might not have accepted. But I went and had a practice session, and I was back to smashing 180s in, 41, 9 double 16, 16 double 16, big 20 double 18, like I always did. I mean, I'm giving away a lot more trade secrets now in my coaching and everything now, but I was pretty robotic in my, and it was beginning. I had one of them nights where I practiced beautifully, and then Jason said, would you be interested in the match play? It's in York. I think part of it is I'm going to sell tickets, you know, the Duzza Massive no doubt will be out in force and that, so that was another reason, but I'm going to try not to put too much pressure on myself. Gutted I got the late shift. I was never very good at 10 o'clock, and that brings back horrible memories of playing Jose de Souza in the Grand Prix at Leicester. Even people beginning to walk out during the game. So I was happy I got Jim McEwen, who I think is one of the best players in the seniors. Wasn't happy with the 10 o'clock kick-off.
I just love listening to you talk, and I remember we've done a few of these, and that smile disappeared. I'm really glad to see that smile and that passion is back. First of all, it's great to see. If I said to you I'm happy today, then when I won the Premier League, you'll say, oh, Glenn. But I never lied in any of my interviews. Any question I was ever asked, you know, I remember Dan Dawson, oh, Glenn, just from Middlesbrough, and he's not every question I was ever asked, I decided I would tell the honest truth. And I said to you, I'm a granddad now. You know what I mean? That's just a massive part of my life now. See, the coaching is going well, the commentary, and it's opening other doors as well. I'm hoping 2024 is going to be even bigger and better on the commentary scene. You know, I want to play, I want to get involved with Euro tours, Pro tours. You know, and I have dreams and aspirations of one day being on the national television as well, because I think I've got something to offer. I use Mark Webster as a benchmark. I don't look at Wayne Mardle. I don't look at a Dan Dawson or Stuart Pike. You know, them guys, I see them totally different. I see me as an ex-player who has been in the very top in the world and absolutely been underneath the underbelly of the snake. And I think I can beat, and I think I can offer advice and learn to be a commentator, because I feel I'm getting better. I'm not using words that weren't me. I'm not a wordsmith, and all of a sudden I'm beginning to just find my role, and that's a lot of it's thanks to the MODUS Super Series. Would you like one go at playing it if the seniors go well? Yeah, Group B. Groups B, I don't think I could put myself through a Group A. That's tough a week. Yeah, but I think I've got 8 games in me, because I've come off a couple of exhibitions where I played 21 legs. Yeah. I went down to Barrow a few weeks ago, and it was just like the old days, 21 legs, and played lovely. I thought I really am back, and then went to Manchester, a cricket club in Manchester, and it was a lot of Lancashire Super League players, and I was awful. I was so disappointed, but I had a bad journey down, we were rushing, I pretty much got in there and I was on like 10 minutes later, and I went home and I was really sad, you know, and I was like, you know, all my frailties come, I couldn't bring a dart. It's a strange thing. I mean, I can stand there and do that now. Just so, you know, it's just so effortless.
and put a dart in my hand, and when you're looking at a target, so the psychology of it is, why can I do it without a dart in my hand? And that's because of the fear of missing. So there's a real element there between that and dartitis, just this massive overthinking, a lot of scar tissue, 6-0, 6-1s, walking off the hockey halfway through a game, you know, earning pittance for 12 months from the guy who was number 10 in the world, Premier League champion. You know, I felt the embarrassment. I felt people, and whether people were laughing at me or not, you know, I genuinely, you know, made some good friends, you know, good messages, nice, especially when I left, surprising messages. Someone like Joe Cullen sent me a message that I often sort of look back on. Do I miss it? Not at all. Not even 1%. Not even 1%. I'm looking at you and it's telling you, and I'm hoping you believe me, I'm hoping you're believing me. I don't miss being a dart player 1%. During
the last 3 years, obviously we've had lockdowns, COVID, and then obviously losing your card. Have you actually had a chance to look back and actually reflect on what you did achieve?
I think I have, because I've looked at a lot of videos. I cannot look at Glen Durrant versus Stephen Bunting Pro Tour, Glen Durrant, Ian White Pro Tour, Glen Durrant, Daryl Gurney, European Euro Tour. So there's about 4 or 5 videos, Jose de Sousa final of Dublin Pro Tour, and my throw was effortless. Just ridiculously easy. Not good looking, as Chris Mason would tell me. He said, Glenn, I think you're searching for a throw that was never yours. You were never elegant. You never threw a dart. You said you had quite an ugly throw. You know, the micro pullback, a bit like Scott Taylor this week. Yeah. So there's not an awful lot of pullback, but I think I'm wanting to bring it to here where I never did. So that's, you know, watching a lot of them videos. But I've got a fantastic dart room now, and I've got the Premier League trophy in there. I've got a Lakeside trophy in there. 27 grand I paid for the Lakeside trophy. So I'm very proud, very, very proud.
That Premier League win, I know we were talking about it off air when we were doing commentary earlier on in the week. And you often look back and say, what if? Because as Premier League champion, you missed out on the World Series and everything that goes with winning a huge PDC tournament because of the pandemic. No one's fault or anything like that. But you look back and go, I wish I'd just Madison Square Garden or Australia or something like that.
If I was the Glen Durrant of April 2020. So if we go back there, I've just played Daryl Gurney, and I get a message off one of the elite players. Glen Durrant, you are the best dart player in the world right now. One of the elite players. Surprising, don't get on with him, but he sent me this beautiful message. Lockdown, I worked really hard, practiced twice a day, searing heat. I remember beating Andy Bolton, but it was a competition with Michael Smith, Nathan Aspinall, Chris Dobie. It was online. We all shot 50 quid a head and no one ever paid me a penny for it, because suddenly when I won it now, we were only joking about the point being I played fantastic in there. And then I can only pinpoint where we had 10 days in of Premier League behind closed door. For the first 5, I scraped a couple of 6-6s, 6-2 down to Gary Anderson, 6-3 down to Michael Van Gerwen. And I made a decision to go home in between them 2 days. I was never the same player again. Now, it was either coincidence it was that time, because I started looking at my diary, where did it go wrong? And I can only pinpoint it because during lockdown, Glenn, you got COVID and you were never the same player. Rubbish. It's got nothing at all to do with COVID. For a golfer, I lost my swing. For a boxer, I become, you know, is it punch shy? Something?
Yeah, gun shy.
Punch shy. Yeah, I just had lost my rhythm, lost my confidence. And the more you're in that incredibly high pressured situation of being a professional player, I was just getting battered week in, week out, where, you know, you're just going in there with if you're not 100% in Pro Tour, you will get battered, and that's exactly what was happening. So that's the sort of way I sort of self-reflect and look back, but very proud of what I achieved and wouldn't change a thing. When I watched Madison Square Garden, the Glen Durrant of beating Daryl Gurney that night, Aberdeen beating Michael Smith, 109 average in Exeter against Gerwin Price, that Glen Durrant would have loved to have gone to Australia, to Copenhagen, to Australia, New Zealand, to America. It didn't happen, but you tell me this, how did I win the Premier League that night?
Doesn't matter how you won it, you did.
I did, but by then I
was there. I was one of the lucky ones to be there behind closed doors.
If Gary Anderson doesn't use these strange darts in the semi, I did get bit of fire in the belly against Nathan Aspinall and played better. But I do look at, I thought the question was going to be, do you ever look back and think, I mean, I was days away from barely being able to hit the big 20, days away. You know, literally I went to a Euro tour, and, you know, that's when people started saying, what on earth is wrong with his throw? And then I go back, get COVID, had a horrible experience of COVID, remember, in a sense that I was stuck in this German airport. Yeah. That was a horrific day. I mean, God, that's one day I would never want back in my life. But I do look back on there, but isn't it just all part of the story? And now I'm earning a crust again. You know, I'm earning a crust by commentating and coaching, and wouldn't change a thing.
On the coaching side of it, Luke Littler, obviously someone that we've seen here an awful lot, and I think he's a generational talent.
I do.
But Mace, when he sat in exactly the same room, and we were talking about him, and look, he's a couple of rands away from securing his tour card over the weekend. But Mace brought up a good point, that does he need to rush it? And if you were in his shoes at 16, you've been in that, and Mace called it a snake pit. At 16, are you ready for it? Or perhaps does, not just Luke, but in general, is 16 the right age to be able to go into that environment?
He is. He's got that X factor. I'm just hoping he's got the right people around him, good managers, good sponsors. He's got that little bit of arrogance about him as well. It will be interesting to see how he responds to losing every week. And what I mean was, hopefully he's losing in the final, quarter-final, semi-finals, but he ain't going to dominate like he has done every other thing that he's done in his life. He's just a very special player. I think you could mention any other 16-year-old in the world, because I saw what happened even as soon as Leighton Bennett. The pressure that kid was put under at 14 and 15. I remember a game he played at Chelsea with Bo Greaves, and you could see him crumbling in front of our eyes. Luke Littler is something just a little bit special, and I think if you're old enough, you're good enough, and I say good luck to him.
It was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So we were talking about it because it is a horrible environment to be in, because
he's full of confidence. He can do 117 averages. It's how long that confidence, because when he starts losing, how does he react to that? At 16-year-old, he seems very mature. Don't like some of his social media posts. So if I was in his team, I would be starting there. But he's got fantastic sponsors around him. You know, it's like the question, would you have a manager in the sport? You know, what do they bring to it? The right person around him right now, because he's going to need it. There's going to be a lot of attention on him, but everything he's been asked for so far, you know, he sort of delivered, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I think if you're old enough and good enough, in this respect of Luke Littler, because he just has that X factor.
Is he the best 16-year-old you've ever seen?
I watched Michael van Gerwen in Finland or Denmark or somewhere like that at the 14 or 15. I'd put him on a parallel of MVG.
Huge praise and a bright future.
He's class. He's something special. I thought he might have won Lakeside last year, so there's still a long way to go. It doesn't need to be rushed at 16. It's interesting how he's going to react to that, but listen, go for it.
Coaching side of it, your coaching and coaching in general, is it something that the sport needs? Because obviously we see more and more professional players looking into it, and where's my, not my throw, but where's my technique going wrong and things like that. Is it a good thing for the sport that is coming into it more and more?
The only problem with coaching is that I'll make you think. So the most important thing, let's say a professional player comes to see me. When I stood on a hockey and went A, B, C, D, I had to realise if I was coaching somebody else, how do I make sure they don't do that? I've come up with my own theory, I've come up with my own. What I like is someone raw coming in, someone new to the game, where they're going to learn from it, or seasoned local league, Super League players. It's a big thing to ask if you stand. Now, the closest parallel I can give you is Rob Cross. Rob Cross, world champion, went to the Premier League the year I won it, looked a beaten man for a long time. His manager, Rab Baines, stood behind him. He's not a coach, Rab, but he knew the perfect art for Rob. And Rab is one of the reasons why I started coaching, because I watched him and he'd give a nod, and there was times when Rob would say, look, get away from me. But he persevered, and then he did the sweet 180. And so there could be for that But in answer to your question is, if one of the best players come to me is, you know, how do I can make a 10% player 25% in 2 hours. How do I make a 95% Gerwin Price into a 97% player? So they're the fine lines, because with coaching, I'll make you think. And when you're going through a process, the last thing when you want to play, as a dart player, I was at my best when the only thing I could see was the treble 20. I think for a professional player, I'd make a great mentor. Someone to rant at when things are going bad, something to talk through when they're going good. So it's that fine line between a coach, a mentor and a manager. And I have said no to every professional player. A couple of really good players as well I'd love to work with. I really know my clientele right now, and I'll leave that to the other coaches that are out there. Right now, I like people who just come in and I can instantly improve them with certain changes about their game.
Interesting one on the coaching side of it in regards to when you play on TV. I don't know many people know this, but during a game, as a player, you're not allowed to speak to anyone. You come off that stage, you go backstage, come back out. You're not allowed to speak to anyone, are you? Do you think that players should be, I'm not saying every break, but at least once a game, should players be allowed to speak to their manager, their coach or whatever? Because they're long games sometimes, and sometimes people can see that something needs to be changing. But in every other sport, there's a half time, or in boxing, you get to back to your corner or so on. Do you think that should be allowed? It's
such an individual game is probably the reason why that's not happening. But what people don't realise is a real big team around some players, you know, from sponsors to management. And I think that's a good call. And again, I'm thinking the Davis Cup in tennis, where it's one of the only tennis competitions where a coach can actually sit with them. It might not be to say anything. So let's look at the Lakeside. You used to go to that dreaded VIP room in there.
Horrific.
But I just had 2 minutes with Dennis. And it might be just a fist pump. It might just be, he never once said, right, just, you know, look at your follow through, or there's body movement there. It was just more of a, oh, come on, you can do this.
Back your ideas up.
You're 4-2 down and, you know, you're not playing bad. So I think I like that part. There was a big difference when I left the BDO to the PDC in that back room, that professionalism. I mean, I used to moan relentlessly about people falling all over me from the afternoon session who was still allowed in there, to the PDC where I went, you know, there's my wife, my manager, no, just one of them. What? But look at the size of the room, it's huge. Just one, Glenn, if you don't like it. So it was a big culture shock for me. But yeah, give me them days where I could just go backstage and just maybe just get a little fist pump. You know, you're not going to tell someone too much in that 2 or 3 minutes. Good shout.
The ADC, absolutely flying right now. Have you been surprised of how quickly, not the fact they are going by the argument, but the speed they've got there? So
I mean, I had a little bit of involvement with the Mad Darts. I sort of invested a little bit, but, you know, I wanted to then look at my coaching and sort of opted out quite quickly. And, you know, when you've got people like Scott Hunt involved as well from the North East, I know everything that Steve Brown's done, and, you know, I buy into everything that Steve Brown does. But Scott Hunt is a real person in the North East who was very similar to me 12 years ago. I mean, I built up the Teesside ranking events. We were getting 350 entries for the Teesside Open. We were getting 128 to 200 every time we had a weekly competition. Now things like the vaults, it's not necessarily about the money. And, you know, this is what they're telling you. It's about getting match practice, or local leagues will sort of struggle a little bit. Super League and county will start to struggle because everyone are enjoying these vaults. But what you might not realise, and what a lot of people, the big carrot for them, I'm here now in Portsmouth in this interview, they want to be on that stage behind me. That's where they want to play, that carrot to play at the MODUS Super Series, the weekly prize of $5 grand. You know, the champions of 20 grand, that's the carrot for amateur dart players at the moment, and people are now using the ADC, and now we've got ADC Europe, Oceanic. Yeah, big things are happening, and it doesn't surprise me.
Do you think there's a shift coming in the amateur game right now?
Oh, listen, I had a lovely phone call with Nick Rolls recently, and you know, the WDF, I wouldn't want to be sort of in Nick's shoes. I mean, Little Richard and Nick Rolls, I'd put in my top 5 of inspirational people I've met in darts. And they're trying, you know, they've tried, you know, Nick's still in role there. I mean, you've got Lakeside round the corner, and Oh man, yeah, I don't see the brightest of futures, and oh god, if Nick's sort of seen that, I wanted to.
Yeah,
I'm a
you're being honest.
I'm a 3-time Lakeside champion. You know what I mean? That BDO, I owe them everything. You know, it's but there's a modern way with amateur darts now, and it's interesting. Modern amateur darts was the old mad, but it's the ADC that plays. If I spoke to 10 people in Middlesbrough who are regularly playing now, their interest is the ADC. Though there'll be a tribe of them going down to the WDF England, a British Open at Bridlington. But I think people's priorities right now are the ADC and the MODUS Super Series.
Glenn, it's an absolute pleasure picking your brain for the last half an hour, mate. I massively appreciate it as always.
Anytime.